The first time I realized my brother had stolen from me, I was 8 years old. It was a painting of our family dog, Max, that I'd spent weeks perfecting. Nathan had scribbled his name over mine and presented it to our mom as his own work. 24 years later, history was repeating itself. But this time, the stakes were much higher. I'm Lila, and I was staring at an advance copy of my brother's soon-to-be-released autobiography, Innovation Through Adversity. The familiar words jumped off the page, stabbing at my heart with each sentence I read. These weren't just similar ideas. They were my exact words, lifted directly from the business strategy documents I'd drafted over the past 5 years. "Holy shit," Sam whispered, leaning over my shoulder. "Isn't this the exact framework you showed me last year? The one about sustainable urban development?" My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. "Not just that, look at this." I pointed to a paragraph about revolutionizing community spaces. "This is word for word from my proposal to the city council, the one they rejected because I lacked experience." Sam grabbed the book and started reading aloud. "The key to urban renewal lies not in demolition and reconstruction, but in reimagining existing spaces as living, breathing ecosystems." He looked up at me. "Layla, these are literally your words from your TED Talk submission." I sank into my office chair, my mind racing back through years of coincidences, where Nathan had somehow always been one step ahead of me, presenting my ideas as his own. The childhood painting was just the beginning. There was the short story in high school that won him first prize, the business concept in college that earned him a prestigious internship, and now this, a complete appropriation of my life's work. My phone buzzed. It was Nathan. "Hey sis, did you get the advance copy I sent? Can't wait to hear what you think." "Don't respond," Sam advised, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Not yet. We need to think this through." I stood up and paced the room, my anger building with each step. He's going to be on Good Morning America next week. The book comes out in 3 days. He's already got speaking engagements lined up at major conferences. "Then we have work to do," Sam said, pulling out his laptop. "Where are your original documents?" I pulled open my filing cabinet and retrieved a thick folder. "Everything's here, every draft, every email, every timestamp. I've always been careful about documentation, ever since that painting incident." "Smart girl," Sam nodded, starting to scan the papers. "We should also reach out to Serenity at the Daily Post. Remember her from the charity gala? She's been looking for a breakthrough story." My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. "Sweetheart, isn't your brother's book amazing? He's finally living up to his potential. You must be so proud." I threw the phone onto my desk, fighting back tears of frustration. "You know what's ironic? He dedicated the book to me. To my sister Layla, my constant inspiration. He actually had the nerve to thank me for inspiring him." Sam looked up from the documents. "Layla, this isn't just plagiarism. This is fraud. He's built an entire false narrative around your work. We have everything we need to expose him." I walked to the window, watching the city lights flicker in the evening darkness. "He's my brother, Sam. This will destroy him. And what he's doing isn't destroying you." Sam stood beside me. "Think about all the opportunities you've lost because he kept stealing your thunder. Think about all the people who could have benefited from your ideas if they'd known their true source." My phone buzzed one more time. A notification from Publishers Weekly. Nathan Duncan's Innovation Through Adversity, predicted to debut at the #1 on bestseller list. Something snapped inside me. I turned to Sam, my decision made. "You're right. Get Serenity on the phone. It's time everyone knew the truth." Sam was already dialing. "What's the plan?" I picked up Nathan's book, running my finger over the glossy cover with his smiling face. "First, we gather every piece of evidence. Then, we wait for the perfect moment. Nathan always loved being the center of attention. Let's make sure his book launch is one no one will ever forget." "Are you sure about this?" Sam asked, his finger hovering over the call button. I thought about that little girl with the dog painting, about all the times I'd stayed silent, about all the dreams I'd watched my brother claim as his own. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. It's time to take back my story. The next morning, I sat across from Serenity at a quiet cafe, watching her face as she flipped through my evidence folder. Her eyes widened with each page turn, occasionally glancing up at me in disbelief. She paused, holding up one of my original drafts. This is dated 3 years before your brother even started writing his book. Keep going, I said, sliding her my laptop. There's more. She opened my email archives, scrolling through hundreds of messages between me and various city planners, investors, and community leaders. All of them contained detailed discussions of the very initiatives Nathan now claimed as his own. Your brother's either very brave or very stupid, Serenity muttered, taking notes. Did he really think you wouldn't have proof? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with my mother's face. I hesitated before answering. Layla, darling, are you coming to Nathan's book reading tomorrow night? He specifically asked for you to be there. I caught Serenity's eye as she mouthed, "Go," and nodded vigorously. Of course, Mom. Wouldn't miss it. Wonderful. He's so nervous about it. You know how he gets with public speaking. Having his big sister there will mean the world to him. The irony made me want to scream. Instead, I kept my voice steady. Yeah, I know exactly how he gets. After hanging up, Serenity leaned forward. This is perfect. The book reading gives us a chance to gather more evidence. If he's reading directly from passages you wrote, we can record it. I finished her thought. But we need more than just my word against his. Leave that to me, Serenity said, packing up her notes. I'm meeting someone this afternoon who might be interested in this story. Tyron Ward. He's been Nathan's friend since college. I remembered Tyron, always slightly uncomfortable at family gatherings, like he knew something wasn't quite right. You think he'll talk? He reached out to me last week with concerns about inconsistencies in Nathan's story. He just didn't know what those inconsistencies meant until now. Back at my apartment, I dug through my old storage boxes, looking for anything else that might help. Under a stack of college notebooks, I found a photo that made my chest tight. Nathan and me at his high school graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling. Mom had taken it right after he'd won the school's entrepreneurship contest with my business plan. You okay? Sam's voice came from the doorway. He'd been helping me search through old files all afternoon. Found another one, I said, holding up a notebook. The original drafts of the community garden project. Look at the date, Sam whistled low. 6 years ago, way before Nathan's revolutionary idea for urban farming. My phone buzzed with a text from Serenity. Just met with Tyron, he's in. Says he has emails that prove Nathan asked for your old business plans for research. Meeting him tomorrow morning. It's really happening, isn't it? I said, more to myself than Sam. You can still back out, Sam reminded me. Family is complicated. I thought about all the family dinners where Mom had gushed about Nathan's latest achievement while I sat quietly, knowing the truth. About Dad before he passed, telling me to let Nathan have his moment when he won that contest with my work. Family is complicated, I agreed, but the truth is simple. My phone buzzed again. Nathan this time. Can't wait to see you at the reading tomorrow. Got a special surprise planned. Love you, sis. Special surprise? Sam raised an eyebrow. Knowing Nathan, he's probably planning to publicly thank me for being his inspiration, I said bitterly. He's always been good at hiding his lies in plain sight. I spent the next hour picking out my outfit for the reading. Something professional, but understated. No need to draw attention away from the star of the show. Not yet, anyway. Serenity called, just as I was hanging up my chosen blazer. Tyron came through big time. He has screenshots of Nathan asking specifically for your TED Talk materials. Says he needs to fact-check something. Date stamp shows it was 2 weeks before he submitted his book manuscript. I sat on my bed, suddenly exhausted. What if this destroys my family? Serenity. Honey, she said gently, your brother already did that when he stole your life's work. You're just bringing the truth to light. After we hung up, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, practicing my calm, supportive sister smile for tomorrow's reading. It had to be perfect, natural, the same smile I'd worn for years while watching my brother take credit for my ideas. But this time would be different. This time, I had proof. My phone lit up with one final message from Nathan. Picked out the perfect passage to read tomorrow. It's the one about turning setbacks into stepping stones. You're going to love it. I knew exactly which passage he meant. I'd written it the day after Dad's funeral. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The bookstore was packed. I arrived early and slipped into a seat near the back, watching the crowd file in. Nathan stood near the podium, chatting with fans and signing advance copies. He was wearing the blue tie Dad had given him for his college graduation. Your brother seems nervous, Tyron whispered, sliding into the seat next to me. We'd arranged to meet here rather than be seen together earlier. He's been checking his phone every 2 minutes. He always gets nervous before stealing someone else's spotlight, I muttered. Tyron shifted uncomfortably. Listen, Layla, there's something else you should know. Last week, Nathan asked me to backdate some documents, said it was for legal purposes. My stomach dropped. What kind of documents? Project proposals, business plans, dated from 5 years ago. He said he needed proof of original authorship for his publisher's legal team. Before I could respond, Mom appeared, beaming with pride. Layla, sweetie, come sit up front with the family. I caught Tyron's eye as I stood. He nodded slightly, phone ready to record. The front row felt like a hot seat. Nathan spotted me and waved enthusiastically, then turned to the crowd. Before we begin, I want to thank my amazing sister, Layla. She's always been my biggest supporter. The audience applauded. I forced a smile, feeling Serenity's presence somewhere in the crowd, ready with her notepad. Nathan opened his book, and I recognized the page immediately. This passage is particularly special to me, he began. I wrote it during one of the darkest moments of my life. My hands clenched as he read my words about Dad's death, about turning grief into motivation. I'd written those words through tears, alone in my apartment the night after the funeral. Now Nathan was performing them like an actor, his voice catching at all the right moments. My phone vibrated. A message from Sam. Serenity just got confirmation from your old writing professor. She has your original draft from the grief counseling workshop. Nathan finished reading to enthusiastic applause. During the Q&A session, a young woman stood up. Your insights about community development are revolutionary. How did you come up with these concepts? I watched my brother's face carefully as he answered. Well, it's funny you should ask. These ideas actually came to me during a very challenging time. That's not true, a voice called out. All heads turned to see Tyron standing. Nathan, tell them where those ideas really came from. The room went silent. Nathan's smile faltered for just a second before he recovered. Ty, always the joker. But seriously, folks, show them the emails. Nathan, Tyron continued. The ones where you asked for Layla's project files. Mom turned to me, confusion written across her face. Layla, what's going on? Nathan's publicist quickly stepped in, trying to move on to another question. But the damage was done. I could see people in the audience whispering, some pulling out their phones. Maybe we should address this. Serenity stood up, press badge visible. Mr. Duncan, would you care to comment on the striking similarities between your book and your sister's documented work from the past 5 years? Nathan's face went pale. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time that evening. Lila, what did you do? What did I do? I stood up slowly. I kept records, Nathan. Every single time you took credit for my work, I kept proof. Just like that painting of Max when we were kids. The audience was completely silent now, watching the drama unfold. Mom's hand was over her mouth. You don't understand, Nathan said quickly. I was going to tell everyone eventually. I was going to share the success with you. That's what the surprise was going to be. I was going to announce you as my co-author. Co-author? I laughed bitterly. Of my own work? His publicist was frantically making calls. Serenity's photographer was snapping pictures. But all I could focus on was Mom's face as she finally began to understand. "Nathan," she whispered, "please tell me this isn't true." He opened his mouth to respond, but his phone chimed loudly in the silence. He glanced at it, and I saw the moment he realized what was happening. It was a notification from the Daily Post's website, where Serenity's first article had just gone live. Best-selling author accused of plagiarizing sister's work. "I can explain everything," Nathan started, but people were already standing up, murmuring, some heading for the exits. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, watching my brother's carefully constructed facade crumble, I just felt tired. But there was no going back now. The truth was out there, spreading through social media, impossible to contain. And we were only just getting started. The morning after the book reading, I met Judah at his office. He'd been my mentor since I started my career, and right now, I needed his perspective more than ever. "Your phone's been buzzing non-stop since I walked in," he noted, pouring us both coffee. "I'm guessing the story's gaining traction." I showed him my screen. Hundreds of notifications, missed calls from Mom, messages from old colleagues. Serenity's article has over 50,000 shares. Nathan's publisher has temporarily suspended book sales pending an investigation. "And how are you holding up?" Before I could answer, my phone lit up with Mom's face again. This time, I answered. "How could you do this to your brother?" Her voice was raw. "In public? In front of everyone? How could he steal my entire life's work?" I shot back. "In public? In front of everyone? He made one mistake." "One mistake?" I stood up, pacing Judah's office. "Mom, he's been doing this since we were children. Remember that painting of Max? That was different. You were kids. What about my business plan in high school? My college thesis? Every single idea I've ever had that he claimed as his own? Were those all different too?" The line went quiet for a moment. "He's your brother, Layla. Family forgives. Like you forgave Dad when he missed Nathan's graduation for a business trip. That's not fair." "No. What's not fair is that you've always had different rules for us. Nathan gets forgiveness. I get lectures about family loyalty." After she hung up, Judah cleared his throat. "Your father once told me something interesting about Nathan. This caught me off guard." "Dad talked to you about Nathan?" "It was about 6 months before he passed. Nathan had just won that startup competition with what I now realize was your urban development proposal. Your father knew Layla. He knew it was your work." My coffee went cold in my hands. "What?" "He said he was worried about Nathan's pattern of taking credit for others' work. He wanted to address it, but then he got sick." Judah leaned forward. "He left me a letter for you. I've been waiting for the right time to share it." He pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. The handwriting was unmistakably Dad's. "My dearest Layla," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to have this conversation in person. I owe you an apology. I've watched you dim your light to let your brother shine, and I've been too weak to stop it. I told myself I was protecting him, but in doing so, I failed to protect you." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. My phone buzzed again. A text from Nathan. "Please call off your journalist friend. Mom's devastated. Haven't we done enough damage to this family?" "Still trying to make you the villain," Judah observed, reading over my shoulder. "Classic manipulation." "Maybe he's right," I whispered. "Maybe this is too much damage. Read the rest of the letter." I wiped my eyes and continued. "You have a gift, Layla. Your ideas could change the world if you'd stop letting others claim them as their own. Including your brother. Especially your brother. Don't let my failure to address this become your reason to stay silent. Love, Dad." My phone chimed with an email notification. It was from Nathan's publisher, requesting a meeting to discuss the situation. Below that was a message from Serenity. "Nathan's trying to spin this. He's calling a press conference for tomorrow. We need to move fast." "What would you tell a client in this situation?" Judah asked, taking the letter back carefully. to stand their ground, to protect their intellectual property, to what? To stop apologizing for telling the truth. He smiled. Exactly. And what would your father want you to do? Before I could answer, another text came through, this time from Mom. Nathan's invited us all to dinner tonight. Please come. We need to fix this as a family. Judah raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. Right before his press conference. He wants to control the narrative, I realized. He's going to try to convince everyone it was all a misunderstanding. So what are you going to do? I thought about Dad's letter, about all the years of staying quiet, of letting Nathan take what was mine, about Mom's selective memory and Nathan's careful manipulations. I'm going to dinner, I said, standing up. But first, I'm going to call Serenity. If Nathan wants to handle this as a family, fine. But this time, we're doing it my way. Judah nodded approvingly. Your father would be proud. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from Sam. Whatever you decide about dinner, I've got your back. And Layla, Dad was right. It's time to stop dimming your light. I took a deep breath and dialed Serenity's number. The truth had started this fire. Now it was time to let it burn. Mom's house smelled like lasagna, her go-to peace offering since we were kids. Nathan was already there when I arrived, sitting at the kitchen counter like nothing had happened, like he hadn't spent years stealing my work. Layla, he stood up, arms open for a hug. Can we please talk about this rationally? I stepped back. Sure, let's talk rationally about how you plagiarized my entire portfolio. Ladies, Mom interrupted, setting down the lasagna. Let's eat first. Everything's better after food. We sat in tense silence, the only sound the scraping of forks against plates. My phone vibrated in my pocket, Serenity confirming she had everything ready for tomorrow. So, Nathan cleared his throat. I've been thinking about how to make this right. What if we co-author the next book? Split everything 50-50? I nearly choked on my water. Are you serious? It's a generous offer, Mom chimed in. A fresh start. Generous? I put down my fork. He stole my work, published it under his name, and now he's offering to let me help him steal more. That's not what Nathan started. I have a better idea. I cut him off, pulling out my laptop. Why don't we look at these? I opened my email and turned the screen toward them. These are the original drafts of everything in your book, with timestamps. And these, I clicked to another folder, are the emails you sent asking for my input on your projects. Nathan's face went pale. Those were private conversations. So was my grief about Dad, but you had no problem publishing that. Mom's hand trembled as she reached for her wine glass. Nathan, what is she talking about? Show her, I demanded. Show her the passage you read yesterday. Tell her when I really wrote it. Nathan looked trapped. I may have borrowed some concepts. Borrowed, I laughed. Is that what we're calling theft now? My phone buzzed again. A text from Sam. Serenity's article just dropped. Check Twitter. I pulled up the story. Exclusive. Inside the Duncan literary scandal. New evidence reveals. Years of systematic plagiarism. Nathan's phone started ringing. Then Mom's, then mine. What did you do? Nathan whispered, scrolling through his notifications. I told the truth. Something you should try sometime. Mom was reading the article, her face growing paler with each scroll. Nathan, these documents, these dates. It's not what it looks like, he started, but Mom held up her hand. Stop. Her voice was different, harder than I'd ever heard it. Just stop lying. The doorbell rang. We all froze. That would be Serenity, I said, standing up. I invited her to join us. Hope you don't mind, Mom. She has some questions about Nathan's creative process. You can't do this. Nathan grabbed my arm. This is family. I pulled away. Family doesn't steal from family. Serenity entered with her notepad ready. Mr. Duncan, care to comment on the evidence suggesting you've been appropriating your sister's work since high school? This interview is over. He stood up, heading for the door. Running away, I called after him. That's new. Usually you just take credit for someone else's solution. He spun around, face red. You want to know why I did it? Because you were always Dad's favorite. The smart one. The creative one. The one with all the potential. I just wanted… What? I demanded. What did you want? To make him proud. Just once. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom had tears streaming down her face. Dad was proud of you, I said quietly. He just wanted you to be proud of yourself, your real self, not some version built on my work. Nathan slumped against the wall. The publisher's going to want their advance back. My reputation is exactly what you earned, Serenity finished, still taking notes. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from Judah. Just saw the article. Your father would be proud, not of Nathan's actions, but of your courage to stand up for yourself. Nathan, Mom finally spoke. I think you should leave. We all need time. As he walked out, shoulders slumped, I felt a strange mix of victory and sadness. This wasn't how I'd imagined our family dinner going when we were kids, playing house and sharing dreams. Ms. Duncan, Serenity turned to me. Would you like to make a statement about your plans moving forward? I looked at the half-eaten lasagna, at Mom, wiping her tears, at the empty chair where my brother had sat. Yes, I said, straightening my shoulders. I'm reclaiming my voice, and this time I'm not letting anyone silence it. The truth was out, the damage was done. And tomorrow's press conference would be very different from what Nathan had planned. Sometimes I realized you have to break things to fix them properly. The hotel conference room buzzed with anticipation. Journalists filled every seat, cameras flashing as Nathan approached the podium. I sat in the back row between Sam and Serenity, watching my brother straighten his tie, Dad's tie, one last time. Thank you all for coming, Nathan began, his voice shakier than usual. I'd like to address the recent allegations regarding my book. Where's your sister? Someone called out. Is she here? Nathan's eyes scanned the room, landing on me for a brief moment before darting away. Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. There's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding about plagiarism. Another reporter stood up. We have evidence spanning decades. If you'll let me explain. Nathan. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. Mom stood up from her seat in the front row. I hadn't even noticed her come in. Tell the truth, please, just once. The room went silent. Nathan gripped the podium, knuckles white. Mom, My phone vibrated. A text from Tyron. Check your email, now. I opened it to find dozens of forwarded messages. Conversations between Nathan and his publisher from months ago. My heart stopped as I read them. The publisher knew, I whispered to Serenity. They knew the work was stolen and published it anyway. Serenity's eyes widened as she read over my shoulder. She stood up immediately. Mr. Duncan, would you care to comment on these emails, showing your publisher was aware of the plagiarism before the book's release? The room erupted. Nathan's publicist rushed to the podium, but it was too late. Reporters were already pulling up the forwarded emails on their phones. Is this why the press conference was called? Someone shouted. To get ahead of this story. Nathan looked like he might faint. I can explain. Let me. I stood up, making my way to the podium. The room fell silent again. Those are my words, in that book. My ideas, my experiences, even my grief over our father's death. And now we know the publisher was complicit in stealing them. Lila, please, Nathan whispered, as I reached the podium. No, I said firmly. You've done enough talking for both of us. Turning to the crowd, I continued. For years, I watched my brother take credit for my work. I stayed quiet because that's what family does, right? We protect each other. But I've realized something. By protecting him, I was hurting myself. And worse, I was denying the world the truth. Mom was crying silently in the front row. Nathan had sunk into a chair, head in his hands. The publisher will be receiving a cease and desist letter from my lawyer this afternoon, I announced. As for my brother, I turned to look at him. I forgive you, Nathan. Not for your sake, but for mine. I'm done carrying the weight of your lies. Breaking news. A reporter in the front row read from his phone. Publisher announces immediate recall of innovation through adversity amid plagiarism scandal. Nathan's publicist was frantically making calls. Cameras were flashing non-stop, but all I could focus on was Mom, who had walked up to the podium and taken my hand. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I should have seen it, should have stopped it." "Ms. Duncan," a reporter called out, "what are your plans now?" Before I could answer, Serenity stood up. "Actually, I can help with that. The Daily Post would like to announce a new collaboration with Layla Duncan. A series of articles showcasing her original work and innovations, starting with the true story behind the stolen book." Nathan finally looked up, his face ashen. "You're going to write about all of it?" "Every word," I confirmed. "But this time, under my name." My phone buzzed again. A message from Judah. "Your father's letter is trending online. People are calling it a wake-up call about family dynamics and intellectual theft." The press conference dissolved into chaos after that. Nathan was escorted out by his publicist. Mom stayed by my side as reporters shouted questions. Through it all, I felt strangely calm. Later, as Sam drove me home, he asked, "Was it worth it?" I thought about the years of silence, the stolen ideas, the painful family dinners. Then I thought about tomorrow's headline, already approved by Serenity: "Innovation Through Truth, the real story behind the year's biggest literary scandal." "Truth is always worth it," I replied, "even when it hurts." My phone lit up with a final text from Nathan. "I'm sorry, not for getting caught, for everything. I hope someday you'll believe that." I didn't respond. Some conversations couldn't happen through text messages. Some healing couldn't happen overnight. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. The truth was out there, and it was written in my own words. 2 weeks after the press conference, I sat in Serenity's office, reviewing the final draft of our first article. The headline read, "The Innovation Behind the Deception, A Sister's Story." "The response to the preview has been overwhelming," Serenity said, scrolling through her analytics. "Over 100,000 pre-orders for the digital edition." My phone buzzed, another interview request, this time from a major morning show. I'd already done 3 this week. "People keep asking about Nathan," I sighed. "They want the dramatic sibling showdown." "And what do you tell them?" Before I could answer, Mom walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She'd been showing up like this lately, trying to rebuild our relationship one caffeine fix at a time. "I told you I'd meet you for lunch," I said, taking the coffee. "I know, but I just got off the phone with Nathan's therapist." She sat down, hands shaking slightly. "He's been diagnosed with imposter syndrome. Apparently, it's been affecting him since childhood." "That explains things," I said, "but it doesn't excuse them." "No," Mom agreed, surprising me. "It doesn't." Serenity's phone rang. The publisher's legal team, wanting to settle. She stepped out to take the call, leaving Mom and me alone. I found this while cleaning out the attic. Mom pulled something from her bag. It was the painting of Max, the one Nathan had claimed as his own all those years ago. My signature was still visible under his scribbled name. "You kept it?" "Your father did. He wrote something on the back." I turned it over, in Dad's handwriting. "Layla's first masterpiece. Proof that talent can't be stolen, only borrowed." "He knew," Mom whispered. "All along he knew." The door burst open, and Sam rushed in. "You need to see this. Nathan just went live on social media." We huddled around his phone. Nathan sat in what looked like a hotel room, looking exhausted. "I've been trying to figure out how to say this," he began. "The truth is, I've spent my whole life trying to be someone I'm not. I stole my sister's work because I couldn't bear the thought of being ordinary. Layla was always the extraordinary one." Mom grabbed my hand as he continued. "I'm checking myself into a treatment facility," Nathan announced. "And I'm returning every penny from the book sales. Not to the publisher, they knew what they were doing, but to my sister. It's her work. It always was." Comments flooded the live stream, some supportive, others angry, all of them intense. To Layla, Nathan looked directly at the camera. I know you might be watching this. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for understanding. I just want you to know that Dad was right about you. You are extraordinary, and I'm sorry I tried to dim your light instead of finding my own. The stream ended. The room was silent. Well, serenity had returned. That's going to change the narrative. My phone exploded with notifications, journalists wanting comments, social media going crazy. But one message stood out, from Judah. Your father once told me his biggest regret was not helping Nathan find his own path. Maybe now he finally will. What are you thinking? Sam asked quietly. I looked at the painting of Max, at Dad's message on the back. I'm thinking about paths and choices, and how sometimes the hardest person to forgive isn't the one who wronged you, but yourself for letting it happen. Layla, Mom started, but I held up my hand. I need to make a call. I stepped into the hallway and dialed Nathan's number. It went to voicemail. Hey, I said, voice steady. I saw your video, and I want you to know something. You're not ordinary, Nathan. You never were. You just couldn't see your own light because you were too busy trying to steal mine. Get the help you need, find your voice. And when you're ready, maybe we can both learn to be extraordinary in our own ways. Back in the office, Serenity was putting the finishing touches on tomorrow's article. Should we mention Nathan's announcement? She asked. Yes, I decided, but not as the focus. This story isn't about his confession or my revenge. It's about finding your voice and having the courage to use it. Even when it costs you everything, Mom asked softly. I looked at the painting again, at the two signatures layered on top of each other, a perfect metaphor for our relationship. Sometimes, I said, losing everything is the only way to find what you're really worth. Serenity nodded and typed the final line of the article. In the end, innovation isn't just about new ideas. It's about having the courage to claim them as your own. The autumn breeze carried the scent of coffee from the new community center's cafe, my cafe, built exactly as I'd envisioned it in those original plans Nathan had claimed. The grand opening ceremony was about to begin, and the plaza was packed with familiar faces. Nervous? Sam asked, adjusting the microphone stand. Terrified, I admitted. But a good terrified. Serenity approached with her camera crew. Ready when you are. We're streaming live. I scanned the crowd, spotting Mom in the front row. Next to her was an empty seat, Nathan's seat. He'd been released from the treatment facility last week, but I hadn't heard from him. It's time. Judah touched my shoulder gently. Show them what real innovation looks like. I stepped up to the podium, my heart pounding. Welcome to The Voice, a space designed not just for community gathering, but for storytelling, for truth-telling, for finding and sharing your authentic voice. Movement at the back of the crowd caught my eye. Nathan, looking thinner but clearer somehow, slipped into his seat beside Mom. Many of you know my story, I continued, but today isn't about the past. It's about what we build from our experiences, how we transform pain into purpose. The crowd applauded as I cut the ribbon, officially opening the center's doors. Inside, the walls were lined with local artists' work, each piece tagged with not just the artist's name, but their story. This is incredible, Serenity whispered, panning her camera around the space. Every detail exactly as you described in those original documents. Not exactly, I smiled. I made one change. I led them to the central wall, where a familiar painting hung, the one of Max, with both signatures still visible. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Every voice matters, every story deserves to be heard, even the complicated ones." Nathan approached slowly, staring at the painting. You kept it. Some stories need to be remembered, I said, even the painful ones. Layla, I know, I cut him off. But right now, there's something else you need to see. I guided him to a small office at the back of the center. The nameplate on the door read, Nathan Duncan, Creative Writing Instructor. His eyes widened. What is this? You're good with words, Nathan. Always have been. Maybe it's time you use that talent to help others find their voice instead of taking theirs. After everything I did, because of everything you did, I corrected. Who better to teach about the power of authentic voice than someone who lost and found their own? Mom appeared behind us, tears in her eyes. Your father would be so proud of both of you. Ms. Duncan, a young reporter, called out, "What inspired you to offer your brother this position?" Before I could answer, Nathan stepped forward. "My sister taught me that real innovation isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about helping every voice be heard." The reporter's camera flashed, capturing the moment. Nathan and me, standing together, neither overshadowing the other. Later, as the crowd mingled and explored the center, Judah handed me an envelope. "Your father left one more letter. He asked me to give it to you when you finally built this place." Inside was a single sentence. "Innovation isn't just about new ideas. It's about having the heart to share them, the strength to protect them, and the wisdom to know when to forgive those who tried to take them." So, Sam appeared with coffee. What's next? I looked around at my vision made real. The cafe buzzing with conversation, the workshop spaces filled with aspiring creators, Nathan leading his first writing group, Mom proudly giving tours. Next, I smiled. We listen, we create, we tell our stories, and we tell them in our own voices, Nathan added, joining us. In our own voices, I agreed. My phone buzzed with a notification. Serenity's live coverage was trending. Innovation through healing. How one family turned betrayal into brotherhood. "You know," Nathan said quietly, "I never actually apologized, not properly." "No," I agreed, "you didn't. I'm sorry, Layla. Not just for what I took, but for making you feel like you had to dim your light for mine to shine." I touched the painting of Max, our tangled signatures, a reminder of how far we'd come. Maybe that's the real innovation, learning how to let all lights shine, without extinguishing any of them. Outside, the autumn breeze still carried the scent of coffee, but now it carried something else too. The sound of voices, clear and true and unafraid, each telling their own story, in their own way, in their own time. And finally, after all these years, mine was among them.